Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships, and figuring out if someone's an asshole. So let's take on an Am I the Asshole today. This one, the person writes, I feel like this is entirely ridiculous. I live with my roommate, Matt. We used to be pretty close friends, but over the last 2 years of living with him, we've drifted apart, and I'm just waiting for our lease to move out on my own. Matt's girlfriend, Sarah, pretty much lives with us, despite not paying rent. I won't lie, she annoys me to no end. She's an entitled person who thinks the world revolves around her. Anyway, Sarah has a condition where she gets nauseous at the slightest smell and sight of certain foods. She's an incredibly picky eater, and anything outside of corn dogs or chicken tenders makes her nauseous, according to her. Well, unfortunately for her, I like to cook. I love heavily spiced foods and love to cook Asian-style dishes, so living with a toddler who can't stand the smell really sucks. Sarah has always complained about me cooking smelly foods and has asked me to stop or do it when she's not home. Well, considering she doesn't pay rent and spends 18 hours a day at my home, I have not accommodated her at all. Last night, Sarah and Matt sat me down and told me I need to stop cooking because Sarah cannot stand it anymore. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown last week when I was cooking curry. She claims I am making our apartment a hostile environment by ignoring her concerns. I told both of them to piss off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent. Matt said that because he lives here, his opinion matters as well, and he wants me to stop. I told him no to that as well because he's only doing this because Sarah's being a child. We ended up having a massive argument and neither of them is talking to me. Both are staying at Sarah's mother's house right now. I say good riddance. At least I did until I told the story to my coworkers and they were all shocked. They said I'm being a complete a-hole. This has given me second thoughts on if I was the a-hole in the fight we had. No! So roommate hygiene is a big place where we can learn a lot about toxic relationships. It's actually a great place for people when they're younger to learn about toxic relationships before they have to learn this in a really more precarious place, like an intimate relationship, right? Roommate situations are tough. You have to be on your game. It's about doing the dishes. It's about keeping your part of the home, the apartment, the room, whatever it is, clean. That's what a roommate situation is about. It's really about learning to set boundaries, keep boundaries, all of that. But all of that said, it's also about who the hell lives there. And it's also, above all else, about compromise. And what's so interesting to me is this woman doesn't live here. So that's roommate 101. There has to be like a limit. And in fact, I think actually some leases even have that, by the way, the number of nights someone else can sleep in the apartment that's not on the lease. The fact of the matter is, this woman has decided to move in. If that's the case and you're not paying rent or you're not offering to pay towards something, let me buy this, let me do this, let me pay your electric bill, I'm here all the time. Not doing that, entitlement. That's that. Now, here's the thing. This woman eats like a 3-year-old and a very unhealthy 3-year-old with the corn dogs and the chicken tenders. So clearly she can tolerate the smell of fried food. So if I had heard like, okay, this person only eats like rice and steamed vegetables, like foods that don't have smells, I'd be like, okay, maybe there's some truth to this. Fried foods, that's got to be one of the strongest smells. I mean, there's almost like this inherent bias against certain smells. None of us like all smells, but again, roommate situation, you don't live there. And this Sarah person should be the one creating the workarounds. So when we live somewhere and we can't eat and cook what we want, that's not going to work. Like that's a basic fundamental right of living in a place where you're paying the rent. Now, it's interesting. Matt's in for a wild ride because my guess is this entitlement is sort of who this woman is, and he gets to have his own toxic relationship, and that's on him. So he is enabling her entitled behavior. And if it is so terrible, Matt could have a conversation saying, my roommate does pay half the rent. We're going to have to figure this out. Maybe when that's happening, we can get up and leave, instead of saying everybody change their behavior to suit this one person's need. This, by the way, is how entitled people slowly start annexing so much psychological territory. Because what they do is, this has to be my way. Now this has to be my way. And then this has to be my way. And then they start dangling things like, oh, well, now it's so hostile here. It's not a workplace. So that's, my guess is Sarah has probably used the hostile environment threat in other places and gotten away with things. It's an apartment. What's troubling though is that this person went to coworkers who said he is being the asshole. Now, there's your enabling, right? That enabling happened. They don't even know Sarah, but they believe that these kinds of workarounds are so important and are so necessary when they're actually not. I've seen these kinds of situations show up over and over and over again, and in roommate situations where you can say, I live here, this is what I eat. It's also the kind of thing where I have to say it starts getting into even wonkier territory. If somebody said that curry night was going to push them over into some psychological brink, couldn't live in my house, couldn't live in a lot of people's homes where eating curry and spicy food is simply what they eat more nights than not. So there's something even funkier happening there. We don't know who these people are culturally or anything like that, but what all of that symbolizes too. I think that Sarah is a child person who has gotten a long way in her life by saying, I don't want, I just have to have everything my way. Again, that egocentricity, that entitlement, and that more and more people give in to. At this point, they're living at the mother's house. Good. And hopefully, as the minute this lease is done, this person can take all his spices and go someplace else. But this is, I feel for this person who wrote this, because having your coworkers, again, I think the world has gone into a really, really enabling mindset. We have to enable everything. We have to be so careful. We can't have a smell. We can't have a this. We can't have a that. And just to suit one person. Remember, most of us who've ever been through any kind of toxic relationship are terrible at voicing our needs. But we may just go ahead and do it. It's interesting. This person's just going ahead and living his life and their life. I don't know if this is yeah, whoever they are. They're living their lives, just making their dinner. They're not even voicing a need. They're eating their dinner. And yet, when somebody's very entitled and coming against someone who isn't good at expressing needs, which is anyone who's ever been in a toxic relationship, you can easily see how the entitled person's needs encroach and encroach and encroach. My guess is Matt just gives in to whatever Sarah wants for whatever Sarah brings to the table, or Matt's just one of those sad guys who just needs a girlfriend. And so it may very well be that he keeps giving in. Sarah may be very used to her mother giving in. Clearly, her mother's house must be like chicken tender corn dog central, because what could dear old mom be able to cook if nothing can be spicy? And it's very likely that Sarah then, if Sarah even has a job, who knows if she does because she doesn't pay the rent, may actually be going to places and saying, I can't have these smells at work. Couldn't work in a lot of places because there may be spicy smells. This doesn't sound like a chemical intolerance. I want to be respectful of that position. Some people say, no, I have a chemical intolerance to things like perfume and candle smells, like, scents you'd have in an environment. I get that. But this seems like any food that's not fried and doesn't suit, again, her 3-year-old palate is a problem. That seems a little bit like, I just can't be inconvenienced for things to be in my environment that I simply don't like. Having a genuine chemical sensitivity to, again, things like perfumes and soaps and things like that, that's not a preference that really can make people sick. But this person sounds like the smell is psychologically bothersome to her, but she just doesn't like the smell of certain things. It's possible the Sarah person could be pregnant. Some smells can throw pregnant people off. And so maybe that's her groove, but it sounds like this has been going on a while. So unless she's an elephant, I don't think she's been pregnant this long. So them's my thoughts. Again, there's probably more nuance to this story than we know about this woman's intolerance for smells, but the tantruming and even the not trying to have a meaningful adult conversation about it. How can we find a midstream solution? I realize I'm even being accountable. I'm in this apartment a lot and I don't pay for anything. Maybe if some of those things had happened, this letter writer might have said, okay, this person is trying to meet me halfway. Doesn't sound like that at all. So these living with someone can really, really let you see some patterns and traits in a person that you may learn about. It may not even be about that relationship. Roommates come and go, but pay attention to the things that come up so you can pay attention to those patterns in future relationships. Thanks again.